If you've seen the last couple of videos on my Mark 1 Caddy, you might think it's complete. Well, it's not. I'm still missing quite a few parts to complete it, and a lot of them have been ordered online, so that's what I'm waiting for.
In the last episode, my dad came to the rescue and we got the panels painted, allowing us to get them back onto the car. Once the panels were on, we started building the doors back up, installing all of the parts and adding sound deadening. We also fixed the issue with the air intake interfering with the brake fluid reservoir, and finally, we revealed and fitted the new wheels for the Caddy.
We got both of the doors built back up with the windows, the seals and the locks, but there's still something that's making it look a little bit bare. And that is because we're missing the door cards. So I got some that should match the theme of the interior.
I decided to go with black vinyl door cards featuring suede inserts. This choice should perfectly offset the cream in the headliner and complement both the dashboard and the carpet. The combination of materials and colours adds a touch of sophistication to the interior, bringing everything together seamlessly. I thought it'd be a good idea to apply some Dynatrol cavity wax inside of the doors. This will help protect against any rust by preventing any condensation from causing damage. I'm using a brush to apply the wax to both the driver and passenger side doors. This extra step will help keep the doors in great shape for years to come. Next up, we're installing the vapor barriers on the doors. I'm starting by using an old sheet as a template, carefully cutting around it on the new material. It's important to get this right, so I'll make sure not to miss any holes for the window winders and for the handle. It looks like some of you spotted that I installed the door handles on the wrong sides. Before we get the door cards on, I need to quickly swap them around. To secure the vapor barriers, I'm using heavy duty double-sided tape. First, I apply it around the edges of the doors, and then in the center areas to cover any potential gaps. The vapor barrier is an important addition because it creates a seal. It prevents condensation and water from getting behind into the panels, which helps maintain integrity of the door cards and keeps the interior dry. With all the tape in place, I started by slowly applying the vapor barrier, beginning with the top section. Once that was secure, I peel away the remaining tape and press down on the lower part to get a solid seal. It's important to align the barrier correctly to avoid it sticking out the edges of the door card. Once all of that was done, I could repeat the same process for the driver's side door. To secure the door cards, I'm using clips that fit into the slots on the back. These clips slide into place and then snap into the door, holding everything together firmly. With all of the clips in place, I needed to trim some holes into the vapor barrier so they could fit through. The transparent tape made it way easier to see exactly where to cut, ensuring a precise fit without any guesswork. Next, I carefully positioned the door card, making sure all the clips were aligned with the holes on the doors. Once everything was lined up, a few firm taps with my hand ensured it seated flush and securely.
One thing every car needs is a decent sound system. With that being said, I've got some goodies to go in. So I got a Bluetooth radio, some door speakers and an amp to go with it. And as there's not a lot of room in the Caddy, I've got an under-seat sub which should save a lot of room. So the first thing to go in is the amp.
The amp I chose is a Pioneer GMD1 004, and as you can see, it doesn't require many wires to be plugged in. First, I removed the dash trim to access the wires behind. The wiring loom connects in line, so I plugged in both the power and speaker wires into the amp loom. Next, I connect the wires into the amplifier. Given the amp's compact size, it's about the same size as a laptop charger. There are many places that I can mount it. For ease of access, I decided to use double-sided tape and to stick it to the bottom of the dashboard. Once it was securely in place, I reinstalled all of the lower dashboard sections. Using a plug and play amp like this has numerous benefits. It saves room, time and money since there's no need for additional wiring. These amps are an ideal upgrade even for modern vehicles if you want more power from your door speakers. With the amp installed, I could then connect the wires for the radio. To make room for the installation, I pushed back the wires into the dashboard. Then I slid in the metal cage that holds the radio. With the metal cage now in place, I used a screwdriver to push down the metal prongs. Once that was done, I carefully slid the radio in, ensuring not to pinch any wires. And finally, I added the plastic bezel trim for a clean finish. Now, onto the subwoofer. I decided to go with a Kenwood underseat sub as it fits behind the seat and still leaves enough room. To wire a subwoofer, you have 4 main connections. Line in, this carries the audio signal from the radio, which will be your music. Battery, this connects to the battery supplying 12 volts power to the subwoofer. Ground, this connects to the car body, serving as the negative. And the last one, remote. This receives a small power signal from the radio, instructing the subwoofer to turn on. Now that we know where all of the wires need to be connected, I started by attaching the mounting brackets to the subwoofer. I then removed the rear panel and fed the power wire through the slit in the carpet. Since I had already ran the remote wire from the radio to the rear, I used a crimping tool to connect it to the subwoofer. The red and white RCA cables were then plugged in, followed by bolting the ground wire to a bolt on the body. To make sure that the ground connection is fine, I made sure to test it with a multimeter. With everything plugged in, I tucked all of the wires behind the carpet and taped up the exposed sections with black loom tape to keep everything looking clean. I then plugged in the subwoofer and the remote control that comes with. After putting the backboard in place, I secured the subwoofer to the backboard with some screws. Finally, I peeled off the protective plastic. Who doesn't enjoy that? The final audio component to install is the speakers. Given their small size, just 10 cm, I opted for a higher quality brand. These are coaxial speakers, which means the tweeters are mounted directly on the speaker itself. To start, I crimped some terminals onto the speaker wires, then plugged them in and attempted to mount the speakers. However, things didn't go as smoothly as expected, so I decided to try them on the other side, but that didn't really work out either.
When I ordered the door cards, I went with 10 cm holes for the speakers instead of running pods on the door, just for a little bit of a cleaner look. When I'm putting the speakers inside of the doors, it's hitting on this piece of metal, but that's not the only issue. If I close the door, you can see the check strap returns back inside. That only gives 3 cm of room to the mounting point.
So off came the door cards once more, hoping none of the clips would snap in the process, but thankfully they held up fine. The only solution that I could come up with was to enlarge the speaker holes in the door cards. The first step in adjusting the holes was to remove all of the staples in the top half. This allowed me to peel back the material and access the area. Now I could mark out how much adjustment was needed. My dad stepped in to lend a hand. Using a blade, he carefully trimmed the back of the wood, making sure not to pierce the vinyl material behind. It was really disappointing to have to make these adjustments, especially considering the investment I made in these door cards. Sometimes, despite our efforts and expectations, things don't always turn out exactly how we envisioned. But it's moments like these that test us. Remember, challenges are part of the journey, and pushing through them is what keeps the project moving forward. If we let every setback stop us, we'll never get anywhere. So even when things don't go as planned, it's important to adapt and keep going, because that's how we make progress and achieve goals. After everything was trimmed, I applied some contact adhesive glue and carefully refolded the material back into place, pressing it firmly to ensure a secure bond. While my dad tackled the other door card, I managed to get this one installed. I trimmed the vapor barrier to accommodate for the extra space needed for the speaker. Now comes the big moment, seeing if all the adjustments paid off. I started by plugging the speaker in and then attaching the spacer ring and seal. Holding the speaker as high as possible, I secured it with the screws hoping all of the tweaks actually made a difference. I then adjusted the speaker to face upwards. It's quite a cool feature, as this will direct the sound towards the people inside of the car. The final touch was fitting the grille onto the front. Repeating these steps for the passenger side door, I felt a huge relief when everything fit perfectly in the end.
Before we give it a test, there's still one more part of the electrical system that needs some attention. We still need to get a battery connected up to all of these wires.
Since the battery will be mounted behind the seat, using a conventional acid battery isn't feasible without a breather vent. Instead, I opted for an Odyssey Extreme AGM battery. These batteries are compact yet powerful, providing more than enough juice to crank up the beastly 3.2 engine. To start, I'm installing the battery and the mounting bracket and marking the necessary drill holes. After measuring and using a center punch, I could then drill a pilot hole and then use the correct size drill bit. Once the holes were drilled, I could then secure the battery to the backboard. To protect the wires from chafing against the bracket and causing shorts, I covered the edges with clear tubing. Next up, I attached the circuit breaker. This will help prevent any potential issues by cutting off the power in case of a short circuit in the main power wire to the starter. With everything in place, I connected the positive wires to the terminal and finished up by securing the negative cable.
Now everything is connected up, we can give it a test and see if all of this work was actually worth it.
I won't stop till I make a change. I withdraw on the things I make. I turn flaws into flawless traits. I build tall, never capped in space. I won't stop till I hear him say, oh, oh, la da 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 da, la da 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 da, oh, 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 la da 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 da, la da 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 da, oh, oh. 6 a.m. and I'm up again. I got tired eyes, need a cup of blend. That's right, in the AM, that's my only friend. No light, just the sun coming up on the horizon. I lose track of time, yeah, I move fast and climb.
Well, that's good news. It sounds amazing. Hopefully the camera was able to pick up the audio, and if it didn't, you just have to take my word for it. Now we can focus on making the exterior of the Caddy look even better.
A big thanks to the team at Heritage Parts Centre for sending over some new shiny parts to give the exterior a standout look. If you're tackling a project on a classic VW or Porsche, Heritage Parts Centre is your go-to for premium parts. They have everything you need to keep your classic running smoothly.
So we've got a nice chrome bumper, some end caps for the bumper and the brackets to go with it, some wing mirrors, indicators for the front and clips to hold it all together. So if you need any classic VW or Porsche parts, Heritage Parts Centre has you covered. They've given you a special 10% discount. Use code ZAX GAR10 at the checkout. Now let's get back to the video.
The first task to getting the bumper installed is to peel off the protective sticker and remove any leftover glue residue. To protect the rear of the bumper from the elements, I'm applying a coat of wax. This should help extend its lifespan. With the wax buffed in, I bolted the mounts into place using 2 bolts on each side. Next, I carefully position the bumper, making sure not to scratch the fresh paint. Securing the bumper required tightening 2 bolts on each side into the bumper irons. For the front indicators, there was a minor issue. The plastic nuts designed to fit into the bumper were intended for square holes, but the bumper holes were round. To resolve this, I used the Dremel on a file to reshape the holes from round to square. Once that was sorted, the indicators could be pushed into place and secured. If you've made it this far into the video, there's a good chance that you're enjoying it. Please hit that subscribe button as I have a goal of hitting 10k subs in the next couple of months. There are two plastic end caps, simply slot into place with a firm push. The final piece of the bumper is a rubber strip that goes across. After cleaning the surface with alcohol, I peeled off the sticky tape backing and then pressed the strip firmly into place. The last step was clipping on the lower spoiler.
Adding the bumper and the lower spoiler has completely transformed the front of the car, and I'm really liking this new look. I'm not really the biggest fan of these caps on the end of the bumper. I wish it could stop around here, but that's something that I can look into later. For now, this will do. We haven't really done a lot of work on the rear of the Caddy as there's not much to it, but we still need to get the lights installed. I was planning on using my old tail lights, so I gave them a little bit of a polish, but they didn't really turn out how I expected them to. So I bought a set of clear tail lights, and I think they'll look quite good as the Caddy paint is quite bright. When my dad got the panels resprayed, he also done the rear light pods and the fuel flap. So let's get these parts on the car and see how it looks.
Next up, I insert the plastic nut certs into the body. These expand when a screw is added, securing the light pods in place. With the nut certs in, I attached the freshly painted light pods in with screws. The following step was to twist the bulb holders into the back of the lights. There are 4 screws in total that hold the lens in place, so I just quickly tighten them all down. I'm really pleased with the lenses. I think they complement the paint job quite nicely. With that said, I still have a soft spot for coloured lenses. Maybe one day I'll get around to restoring my old ones. The final painted piece to install is the fuel flap. This one is straightforward, just 2 screws holding it into place.
Now we've got the rear lights fitted, it's time to address fitting the mirrors. I wanted to get a pair of chrome ones, but they require drilling an extra hole into the door, plus buying the original set of chrome mirrors is quite expensive. The plastic mirrors should match the front grille, the lower spoiler, the little bit of black on the bumper, so I think it will look quite good.
With the rubber gasket properly aligned beneath the mounting point, I tightened down the 2 bolts on top. Although these aren't the chrome ones I originally planned, I'm confident they will still look fantastic.
So now we're even closer to seeing the Caddy back on the road. But if you want to see that, you're going to have to wait until next time. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.